Last Sunday, my son humiliated me in front of the entire neighborhood. I'm 62 years old, and until that day, I still clung to a quiet kind of dignity. The kind that comes not from titles or money, but from years of waking up before sunrise, from fixing what breaks, from holding your tongue even when you've been cut to pieces. Grace used to say I had working man's pride, the kind of pride that doesn't shout, just builds. Our bungalow sits in a modest San Antonio neighborhood, the kind where everyone knows when you paint the porch or change your oil. Grace and I rebuilt it board by board. She'd pick out the trim, and I'd install it. I carved the porch arch with steam and clamps. I laid every tile in the kitchen by hand, grout smudged into the grooves of my fingerprints like permanent scars. After she passed, I kept everything the same. The curtains she sewed, the wind chimes she hung, even her old ceramic frog by the hose. So when my son Tyler, 27, always in too much of a hurry for anything that doesn't involve money or a mirror, pulled up that morning, I thought maybe he'd come for coffee. Maybe just to sit on the porch like we used to. He stepped out of his leased Audi in spotless white sneakers and sunglasses, waving like he was doing me a favor just by showing up. "Hey, Dad," he called, loud enough for the neighbors 2 houses down to hear. "Just making sure you didn't crash the truck into the grocery store again." Laughter. Curtis, the neighbor who mows his lawn with a spirit level, chuckled, not because it was funny, but because that's what people do when they don't know which side they're supposed to be on. I forced a smile. Haven't mixed up the pedals yet. Tyler walked right past me and into the house without knocking. Like he owned it. Like he didn't need to ask. He came back out a moment later, swinging my truck keys around his index finger like a prize. "Think I'll hold on to these for a bit," he said, too casually. "You know, just in case." "In case of what?" He grinned, tilted his head, that mock-sympathetic look he's perfected. "Come on, Dad. You're getting older. Your reflexes, your memory. Let's not pretend, okay?" I stood there, breath trapped under my ribs. "I've been driving since I was 15. I taught you how to drive." He laughed. "Exactly. And now it's time you stop. You're not invincible, Dad." The worst part wasn't what he said. It was the tone. That new tone. The one he started using after Grace died. Like every word was a diagnosis. Like he'd been waiting for me to start falling apart, so he could step in and take over. When he drove off with my truck keys in his pocket, I didn't stop him. Not because I agreed, but because it hit me. I wasn't supposed to stop him. That was the test. How much could he take before I said enough? That night, I sat in Grace's old rocker, the one with the faded floral cushion she insisted on keeping even after it tore. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked into the bedroom and opened the top drawer of her dresser. Her jewelry box was there, cedarwood, worn smooth around the edges. She only ever wore 3 pieces, a thin silver chain, a pair of pearl studs I bought her on our 20th anniversary, and her wedding ring. That ring. A delicate gold band with a tiny engraving inside. G. Heartsuit F. 1993, until the last dance. It had lived on her finger for 27 years. After she passed, I couldn't bring myself to bury it with her. I wore it around my neck on a chain, under my shirt, close to my heart. It was the last piece of her I kept. But when I opened the jewelry box that night, the chain was there. The clasp was there. The ring was gone. At first, I thought maybe I had taken it off for gardening. Maybe it had slipped into a pocket. I checked every drawer, every jacket, even the laundry. But I knew. I called Tyler. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice casual, distracted. "Hey, Dad. What's up?" "Grace's ring is missing." A pause. Then a loud yawn. "Oh yeah, that thing? It cracked. The chain broke. I tossed it. Don't freak out." "You what?" "It was old, Dad. Looked like it was gonna snap any second. I didn't think you'd care. You never wore it anymore." "I wore it on her birthday." "Well, it's just a ring. I'll buy you a new one if it matters that much." "Just a ring." The words hung in the silence like the blade of a guillotine. He didn't even say he was sorry. Didn't ask if I wanted to come get it. Didn't offer to look for it. That was the moment something in me cracked. Not like the ring, but deeper, a fracture in whatever was left between us. The next morning, a text buzzed through. "Thought you'd love these. Pools, walking trails, close to a hospital. Sun with face, house with garden. Links to retirement communities." I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. Pools. That was his solution. A water feature and a shuffleboard court. He thought if he fed me enough amenities, I'd forget the life I had already built. Around noon, Curtis walked over holding something in his hand, my truck keys. Tyler said you'd be wanting these back, he said awkwardly. I took them without a word. Curtis lingered, then finally looked up. You know, Roy, you've still got it together. I've seen you mow in triple-digit heat, fix that leaky pipe on your roof, drive to Home Depot and back without missing a beat. I nodded. Appreciate that. He scratched his head, then added, don't let them convince you otherwise. That evening, I poured myself a small whiskey and sat in Grace's chair, staring out at the yard. The wind chimes barely moved. I ran my fingers over the spot on my chest where the chain used to hang. Tyler wasn't checking on me. He was checking how far he could push before I'd finally push back. And he wasn't alone. There were others involved. The ring was just the beginning, and I had just failed their first test. A week later, I found my wife's wedding ring on another woman's finger. It started with lemonade. Or at least, that's what Curtis called it. Roy, he said from across the fence, arms resting on the weathered boards, you should come out. Stretch your legs. Blue Cactus Bar does a half-decent Arnold Palmer if you're off the hard stuff. He gave me a look, one part invitation, one part concern. I nodded. I needed air. I needed to be somewhere that didn't smell like Grace's perfume and dusted with polish. The house was too quiet, too heavy. Blue Cactus Bar wasn't really a bar. It was one of those places trying to be too many things, part cantina, part family diner, part karaoke lounge. Neon signs buzzed lazily in the windows, and the ceiling fans were always 2 rotations too slow. The kind of place where folks knew each other but pretended they didn't. We walked in around 4. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, catching the dust mid-air like golden static. The bartender nodded at Curtis. I kept my head down, not ready to exchange pleasantries. And then I saw her. Amber, 20-something, bottle blonde with an expensive manicure and a tan that didn't come from labor. She was perched on a bar stool, laughing too loud, tossing her hair back like she was auditioning for a music video. Her laugh grated, too sharp, too rehearsed. On her left hand, something caught the light. Gold. Thin band. Petite diamond. I felt my spine stiffen. A magnetic pull turned my eyes. There was no mistaking it. Grace's ring. It wasn't similar. It wasn't just a look-alike. It was hers. The same delicate curve. The subtle nick from where it caught the mixer blade in 2002. My breath caught. I walked over before I could think better. My voice came out low, trembling but controlled. That ring, I said, looks just like my wife's. Amber looked at me, confused at first, then smiled politely, a little too slowly. Oh, it's vintage. Ty gave it to me. And then Tyler appeared, like a ghost summoned by guilt. His face tightened the moment he saw me. Hey, Dad, he said, casual, too casual. Didn't know you were coming out. I pointed to her hand. That's Grace's ring. Tyler stepped in fast, shielding her with his arm like I was some unstable stranger. It's just similar, he muttered. Don't make a scene. I didn't flinch. Let me see it. Amber hesitated. Looked to Tyler. He gave a small nod, jaw tight. She slipped the ring off and handed it to me. It was warm from her skin. I turned it over, thumb trembling slightly. Inside, etched in the soft gold in Grace's own handwriting, because she'd had it custom engraved the day she surprised me with it, were the words, G. Heartsuit F. 1993, until the last dance. There it was. Undeniable. Unforgivable. The bar quieted around us. Even the jukebox seemed to pause. Curtis stood frozen by the door, mouth slightly open. I looked up. Amber's face had drained of color. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Tyler reached out for the ring, but I didn't move. He stammered. It was in the garage. I thought you forgot about it. You haven't worn it in years. I figured. You figured you'd give your mother's wedding ring to your girlfriend? I didn't think you'd notice, he said. It was in a box with a bunch of old stuff. I thought you didn't. Don't, I said. My voice shook now. Don't lie about what you thought. You were hoping I wouldn't notice. You were hoping I couldn't. There was a pause. A dangerous one. A breath before the bar exhaled. Then the bartender, a wiry man with a worn-out ball cap and too many tattoos, let out a long whistle. Damn, son, he muttered. That's cold. A woman at the far end let out a laugh. Not the amused kind, the kind that slices. Amber looked around, eyes wide, humiliated. She took the ring back, held it like it had burned her, and slipped it off again. I didn't know, she said quietly, handing it to me with trembling fingers. I took it. The metal felt heavier than it should have. Heavier than gold. Heavier than memory. Tyler was red now, embarrassed, but angrier that he'd been caught than at what he'd done. "It's not that serious, Dad," he snapped. "You're overreacting. She liked the ring, and it was just sitting there. You're living in the past." "Living in the past," I said, stepping closer, voice low. "I built that past. Every shingle. Every bill paid. Every meal on your plate. I earned that ring. She wore it through miscarriages, through surgeries, through 27 years of holding this family together." Amber took a step back. She finally understood she wasn't part of a casual mistake. She was wearing a stolen legacy. Tyler grabbed her hand, ready to storm out, but the silence in the room wasn't letting him go quietly. He looked at Curtis, hoping for backup. But Curtis looked away. Laughter rippled through the bar, not malicious, but condemning. Not at me. At him. He'd expected me to be too frail, too forgetful, too far gone to notice what he'd taken. But now, in front of strangers and neighbors, he was exposed. And the room turned on him like a pack turning from the weakest member. I held the ring in my palm and closed my fingers slowly around it. "Don't come to my house again without calling first," I said. "And don't bring her. Ever." Amber looked like she might cry. Tyler sputtered, still trying to regain control. "Dad, you're making a big deal out of nothing. I was just trying to make her happy." "By robbing your mother's memory?" He didn't answer. I left first. Curtis followed close behind. Outside, the sun was setting low and angry, throwing long shadows across the sidewalk. I stood there for a long moment, breathing, letting the air hit my face. Curtis broke the silence. "You okay?" "No," I said, "but I will be." When I got home, I walked straight to Grace's jewelry box. I placed the ring inside gently, like I was returning a heart to its chest. I sat down at her vanity and stared at my reflection. Wrinkles deeper than last year. Eyes more tired than they should be. They weren't checking on me. They were checking how far they could reach. How much they could take before the old man didn't notice. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I went to the closet, pulled out an old file box, and opened it on the table. Inside, Tyler's college records, the car loan I co-signed, receipts from the wedding that never happened. All of it. I began to take notes. Not out of revenge. Not yet. But clarity. And sometimes, clarity is the most dangerous P*** of all. After the bar incident, I didn't touch Grace's ring for 3 days. I kept it in the jewelry box, exactly where it belonged, but I didn't open it. Not even to check. I couldn't bear to hold it again. Not yet. The weight of it, the emotional mass of that tiny loop of gold, was too much. It wasn't the ring itself. It was what it meant, what it had survived, what it had carried. I sat at the kitchen table in silence, the same place I used to do my taxes, plan birthdays, and drink coffee with Grace while the world was still asleep. Now I sat there with a file box and a pen, retracing every step of my generosity. Every dollar I had handed over in silence. Every compromise I swallowed while pretending it was love. I opened the first folder. Tyler's college tuition. University of Austin. 2 years before he dropped out. I remembered the day he got in. He hugged me like a little boy, eyes wide with dreams. Said he wanted to study economics. Said he'd figure out how money really works. $27,000. I had drained the small savings account Grace and I had been building for our road trip across the country. The one we never took because she got sick. I flipped the page. His first car. Not new, but decent. A 2010 Corolla, silver. $5,000 down. He paid one installment, then lost his job. I took over the payments so his credit wouldn't tank. I told him, "You need good credit to get anywhere." He nodded, grateful, promising it was temporary. It wasn't. Another folder, rent receipts. 3 months, $850 each. He said his financial job fell through. Said it was just until he found another. I knew it was a lie. I could hear Amber in the background of our calls, laughing at some reality show while he told me they were on the edge of eviction. He was never on the edge. I was. I kept digging. An email printout from a wedding venue. Non-refundable deposit, $6,000. I remembered that day like it was yesterday. Tyler had called. Giddy. Said he'd found the perfect place. Lakeside, fairy lights, soft jazz trio. "I just need the deposit, Dad. We'll pay the rest." They never got married. Amber backed out. Said it didn't feel right. But they still went to Mexico the following month on what they called a healing vacation. I saw the photos on social media, palm trees, cocktails, smiles. Another folder. Receipts from a weekend emergency. Car trouble, supposedly. I wired $700 without thinking. Then there was the time Amber got sick, a $900 Venmo for medical costs, which later turned out to be for wellness supplements and a yoga retreat. I took out a notebook and began adding it up. $27,000 for college, $5,000 for the car, $2,550 in rent, $6,000 for the wedding, $700 emergency, $900 medical, at least another $3,000 over the years in gifts, groceries, and surprise crises. Total, $45,150. I closed the notebook slowly. Grace used to warn me, in her soft way, "Don't give so much they forget to thank you," she'd say while folding his old Little League shirts or packing up care boxes during his college years. She was always gentle. She believed in the slow drip of wisdom. She didn't yell, didn't demand. But she saw this coming long before I did. And still, even now, with all the proof laid out on the table, part of me wanted to make excuses for him. I told myself he was young. He was figuring things out. He didn't mean harm. But then I remembered the look in his eyes at the bar. Not regret, not apology. Just irritation. Like I had embarrassed him. I stood up, the chair scraping softly against the tile. Walked to the hallway. On the wall, our family photo, taken under the rain on our last real vacation. Grace had made us stand in the drizzle. Said the colors were prettier that way. Tyler was 16. Smiling. Still innocent enough to mean it. I stared at the photo for a long time. Grace's eyes met mine from across the years. Calm. Knowing. Still urging me to act when kindness turns into weakness. That's when I called Mark Ellis. Mark was our attorney. The one who handled Grace's will, helped us draft the trust, guided us through paperwork after her passing. We weren't friends, but we had shared enough grief to understand each other. He answered after 2 rings, his voice even and warm. "Roy," he said. "Been a while. Everything all right?" "No," I said. "Not at all." He didn't ask for details. Just scheduled an appointment. 2 days later, I walked into his office on Broadway, a quiet, sunlit space across from the post office. Oak shelves lined the walls. Everything smelled like old paper and new beginnings. I sat across from him and laid it all out. The ring, the bar, the texts, the nursing home suggestions, the snatched keys, the creeping suspicion that I was being slowly erased from my own life. Mark listened, took notes, nodded at the right moments. When I finished, he leaned back, laced his fingers together, and said, "Roy, I've got good news. Your name is the only one on the deed. There's no power of attorney, no co-signed accounts, no legal leverage over your assets. You're in full control." I nodded. I already suspected as much. Grace had been meticulous. "I can tighten the rest," he said. "New bank access, identity locks. We can draft a living will that reallocates everything. Give you flexibility without handing over any control. And if I want to sell the house?" He smiled faintly. "The market's hot. You'd have buyers in days. I can connect you with someone discreet, someone who can move fast." I said nothing for a while. Outside the window, a crow landed on a lamppost and cawed loudly, like it was announcing something. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. "Do it. All of it." Mark nodded. "Grace would be proud of you for protecting what you built." As I left the office, something inside me clicked, like a vault closing, like a chapter ending. Not in anger, in clarity. They didn't need to rob me at G** point. They just needed me to believe I was old, slow, confused. But I wasn't confused anymore. And they were about to learn just how dangerous a man can be when he finally stops mistaking silence for peace. Mark moved faster than I expected. 2 days after our meeting, a discreet courier delivered the full packet: notarized forms, identity protections, account transfers, and a fresh living will. I sat down at my kitchen table, cleared off the clutter, and reviewed every page like it was an engineering schematic. Grace would have done the same. She always said paper was the only thing greed feared. The house, still mine, now with added security clauses to keep it that way. My accounts? Moved to a private credit union with a single login only I controlled. Credit monitoring? Activated. New medical proxy? Assigned to my friend and neighbor Curtis, not my son. Power of attorney? Officially revoked from everyone. And the will? It now included a clause Tyler would choke on if he ever read it. Mark added at last. If your son challenges your mental capacity, he wrote, or initiates any legal proceedings against you regarding your estate, he is to be immediately disinherited. I stared at that sentence for a long time, not because it felt harsh, but because it felt necessary. This wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about clarity, about establishing boundaries that should have been drawn years ago. The next step was the house. Mark connected me with Dana Brooks, a realtor with a reputation for discretion and speed. She arrived wearing practical heels, a tan linen blazer, and a look in her eyes that said she didn't waste time. She stepped inside, paused in the entryway, and smiled. "Mr. Fletcher," she said, "your home feels lived in." "It was," I replied. "For nearly 30 years. Grace made every room mean something." She nodded, slowly taking it in. We walked the house. She stopped at the arch in the hallway, the one I steamed and bent myself, cursing every inch of warped oak. "You did this by hand?" she asked. "Yeah." Grace wanted a soft curve, something poetic. She smiled. "It's beautiful." She walked into the kitchen next, ran her fingers lightly over the tiled counters, mismatched patterns Grace picked during a clearance sale 10 years ago. Dana didn't ask for upgrades or modern staging. "You can feel the story here," she said. "Not sure anyone wants that in a listing," I replied. "They do," she said softly. "The right buyers do." We sat at the dining table, the same table where Grace and I used to eat soup on cold nights, where we played cards during power outages. Dana opened her tablet and began tapping through comps in the neighborhood. "Similar bungalows are closing between $590 and $640, she said. "Given your condition, floors pristine, roof intact, landscaping neat. I'd list it at $615. Cash offers only. No financing delays. 20-day close." I studied her. She met my gaze without flinching. "Do it," I said. That night, I stood alone in the living room and looked at the walls we had painted together, the shelves she had decorated with small ceramic birds. The sun had set, and the shadows stretched across the hardwood like ghosts. I thought I'd feel sad, but I didn't. I felt still. That same night, at 9:17 p.m., I got another text from Tyler. "Dad, maybe it's time to stop driving, huh? Just worried. Hope you're not upset." I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I opened the text thread, scrolled all the way back. Years of short updates, requests, questions that sounded like kindness but always led to money. I had spent the last 2 decades being the parent who never said no. Grace used to say, "He always knows you'll catch him." She didn't say it with resentment. She said it like a woman watching her husband slowly erode under the weight of his own kindness. I closed the thread and wrote one line back. "We'll talk soon." That was true. But when we did, it wouldn't be a conversation. It would be a line in the sand. The next morning, I drove to the River City Credit Union. It was small, tucked behind a strip mall, the kind of place most people ignored. I liked that. I parked my truck, with my keys, and walked inside with my new documents. The teller, a young man with a beard and glasses, processed everything without asking questions. "Would you like to set up mobile alerts?" he asked. "Every transaction over $1, I said. He smiled. "Paranoid or practical?" "Experienced," I replied. I walked out with a new debit card, 2 certified checks, and a fresh savings account. All of it was untethered, no linked relatives, no beneficiaries beyond the will Mark had locked down. Then I drove to Sunset Oaks. It wasn't a nursing home. It was a senior living community, small, quiet, with single-level units and no staff pretending to be family. Just residents. Grown adults living private lives with a front porch and a working stove. I rented a furnished 1-bedroom with a patio and a view of the garden. It smelled of pine and fresh paint. The rent was fair, the lease short. I paid the deposit and first month in cash. No forwarding address listed. No paper trail. As I signed the lease, the manager looked up and asked, "Do you want to list any emergency contacts?" I paused, thought about Tyler, about Amber, about who would actually come if something happened. "No," I said. "Not right now." She nodded without judgment. That afternoon, I returned to the bungalow and walked each room, touching each wall one last time. In the hallway, I paused at the mirror. For a long time, I stared at my own face, the crow's feet, the gray at the temples, the man who had slowly disappeared beneath obligation and grief. I didn't look broken. I looked like someone who had stopped waiting to be rescued. Then I hired a locksmith. Every lock was replaced, deadbolts, door handles, even the side gate. I asked for keys with serialized cuts. No duplicates. I canceled my landline, changed every PIN, updated every login. The world outside could howl all it wanted. Nothing was getting back in. I wrote one letter. I sealed it in an envelope, marked it Tyler, and left it on the hallway console next to the garage door. Inside, I wrote, I heard what you said about the nursing home. I saw my ring on her hand. The house is sold. The money is safe. Your things are in storage at Mission Depot, Unit 413. I paid the first month. After that, it's yours to handle. This is my final gift to you. Use it wisely. Or don't. That's up to you. I taped the key to the storage unit inside and folded the note carefully. Then I placed one more item by the door. A charger. Or so it looked. In reality, it was a motion-activated camera, one of those disguised models that streamed live to my phone. Small. Silent. Always watching. I wanted to see what happened when they realized the house was no longer theirs to inherit, no longer a free place to dump their resentment and unload their chaos. I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth to stand by itself. Raw, unwrapped, undeniable. Sometimes, when someone doesn't believe you're strong enough to walk away, you have to leave them with an empty room and their own reflection. I watched it all unfold from the screen of my phone. Friday evening, 6:07 p.m. The hidden camera, the one disguised as a phone charger, sent a motion alert. I opened the feed. There they were. Tyler's black SUV pulled into the driveway like he still owned the air in front of my house. Amber was in the passenger seat, lips tight, arms crossed. They sat in the car for a moment, staring at the house. I could almost feel their confusion through the screen. He stepped out first. Amber followed with exaggerated reluctance, heels too tall for the gravel. They each carried boxes. Tyler juggled a duffel bag too, the kind he never packed when visiting me, only when he was staying. That was the plan, to move in, or, more likely, to squat while they figured out how to turn my home into their possession. Tyler tried the front door. Locked. He pulled out a key and tried again. He jiggled it, then frowned. Tried the back. Locked. He said something I couldn't hear, and Amber rolled her eyes, muttering with sharp lips. She pointed at the garage. He punched in the code on the keypad, the one I had replaced 2 days ago. Nothing. The garage door blinked and rejected him like an immune system ejecting a virus. I watched as frustration grew across his face like a shadow. He stepped back, glancing around, realizing neighbors might be watching. Then, I couldn't believe it. He boosted Amber up to the side window. It was the one I had deliberately left unlatched. She climbed through, awkward and angry, knocking over a picture frame as she landed inside. A moment later, she opened the front door from the inside. Tyler walked in, chest puffed, defiance in every step. I held my phone tighter. On screen, they paused in the hallway. They saw the envelope. Amber picked it up. She read it first. Her face fell. She handed it to Tyler, and he read aloud, voice rising with disbelief and mounting fury. I watched him scan the hallway for any clue this was a prank, watched him rush into the kitchen, into the living room, and then out of frame. But he wasn't going to find anything. I had left nothing. The drawers were empty. The safe was gone. The framed photos of Grace and I were boxed and moved. Even the couch they used to flop on, the one I paid to have reupholstered after Amber spilled wine on it, was gone. The house echoed back their footsteps, cold and hollow. The camera caught Amber slumping into the hallway chair, the one I had salvaged from Grace's sewing room. She buried her face in her hands. Tyler paced, shouting, his voice muffled but violent in rhythm. His hands waved wildly as he pointed at invisible enemies. At me. I imagined what he was saying. How could he sell it? It was supposed to be ours. He's lost it. He's punishing us. No, I wasn't punishing anyone. I was teaching them what silence and tolerance had never managed to explain. I am not a doormat. I am not a retirement plan. And I am no longer a man who allows his dead wife's memory to be passed around like a thrift store trinket. Tyler opened the garage door from inside. Realized the truck was gone. I had moved it to my new apartment complex, tucked safely under a numbered space labeled in my name. He stood in the driveway now, looking like a boy who'd lost the map to his birthday party. They left 20 minutes later. Not with boxes, not with bags. They left with nothing. I watched the live feed until the SUV disappeared down the block. I waited longer, just to be sure. Then I turned off the app and sat back in my chair. The ring, Grace's ring, sat on the nightstand beside me. I opened the jewelry box and looked at it again. I had cleaned it, polished it, let it rest beside her chain like a soldier returning home from war. It glinted softly under the lamp, its engraving catching the light. Until the last dance. We were still dancing, her and I, just not where they could see it. Later that week, Dana called. "Mr. Fletcher," she said, "we have a solid offer. Cash, $615,000. Buyer is clean, local, and ready to close in 20 days. No contingencies?" I asked. "Just a title check. We're clear." I didn't even pause. "Let's sign." The paperwork arrived by courier the next morning. I read every line, every clause. It felt like closing blueprints. Clean, precise, final. A notary met me at Sunset Oaks, sat with me in the rec room while two old ladies played gin rummy in the corner and a fan hummed overhead. He offered me burnt coffee. I declined. The sale price glowed on the page, $615,000. All cash, no strings. I signed, not out of spite, but out of completion. This house, our house, had served its purpose. It raised our son, buried our grief, sheltered our hope. But it wasn't my future anymore. I was my future now. 3 days later, the wire hit my account. The screen at the credit union flashed with a new balance so large I had to reread it. I stood there for a long time, just looking, not because I needed the money, but because I had finally reclaimed what was mine. Every cent was placed into a newly named account, G.F. Legacy Fund. Not a trust, not an inheritance. A future built only for those who earned it. And Tyler? He hadn't called. Not yet. But I knew he would. The quiet wouldn't last. A house is just walls and a roof until someone dies inside it. Then it becomes a vault, full of echoes, memories, and the ghosts you either live with or leave behind. I left mine behind. The money hit my account on a Thursday morning. I was sitting in the modest lobby of River City Credit Union. Vinyl floors, artificial plants, a slow fan pushing tired air in lazy circles. A middle-aged teller named Ramon waved me over, greeted me with the kind of tone you reserve for a stranger who might be someone important. "I believe this is what you were waiting on," he said, turning the screen around so I could see the deposit. $615,000. I stared at the numbers, not because I doubted them, but because they didn't look like revenge. They looked like release. I nodded once. Ramon printed confirmation slips and slid them across the counter. "Would you like to speak to our private account specialist?" he asked. "No," I said. "I've got everything I need." I walked out into the warm San Antonio light, the sun casting long shadows across the parking lot. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking into the weight of an obligation. I wasn't driving home to a house full of questions, messes, and ghosts. I was driving to my own life. Sunset Oaks wasn't luxurious. It wasn't new, but it was clean, quiet, and no one there looked at me like I was failing. No one offered pity with their smiles. My unit, 2B, sat on the far edge, near the small rose garden. A one-bedroom with a kitchenette, a recliner, and a view of a gnarled oak that reminded me of Grace's knuckles when she got arthritis in the winter. I unpacked in 2 hours. 2 suitcases, a box of books, the jewelry box with Grace's ring, and the photograph of us standing in the rain. I placed it on the mantel, if you could call the small shelf above the electric fireplace a mantel, and sat down with a deep exhale. I hadn't realized how loud my old life had become. Tyler's texts, Amber's fake cheer, the clatter of guilt disguised as love. Here, I heard nothing but birds, a lawn mower in the distance, the sound of my own breath. Peace wasn't glamorous. It was quiet, steady, and free. I made myself a sandwich. Turkey, mustard, wheat. Grace would have insisted on tomato, but she wasn't here to argue, so I left it plain. I sat on the patio and ate in silence. My phone buzzed. Tyler. I didn't answer. Another buzz. A second message. "Hey, so, I guess you moved?" "We stopped by, and yeah, I don't get it. What's going on?" I left it unread. Then, an hour later. "Look, Dad, if you needed help, you should have just asked. Amber's upset. We feel blindsided." Blindsided? After stealing Grace's ring? After trying to move in behind my back? After suggesting I belong in a retirement brochure? No, this wasn't blindsiding. This was barricading. That evening, I drove my truck, through downtown. Not because I needed to go anywhere, but because I could. No one had my keys. No one had my schedule. I stopped at a gas station, filled the tank, and paid in cash. I didn't have to ask anyone for permission. I didn't tell anyone where I was. It felt like freedom in the most boring, beautiful form. That night, as I sat in the recliner flipping through channels I didn't care about, I pulled out my phone and reviewed the camera feed from the old house one last time. The front porch was empty. The mailbox open. I watched shadows crawl across the boards I had nailed in place 20 years ago. It wasn't mine anymore. I deleted the app. Next, I logged into the storage unit account. Tyler's name had not yet appeared as a paying tenant. I gave it a week. The following Monday, the facility sent me a notification, Unit 413 delinquent. Automatic lockout scheduled. I smiled. Let the past lock itself away. 2 days later, a message from Tyler finally arrived that didn't ask, whine, or pretend. What's really going on, Dad? Are you okay? This isn't like you. That was the problem. It was like me. This, all of it, had always been inside me. The silence, the watching, the note-taking. I had just buried it under fatherhood and grief, hoping kindness would be enough to hold the dam. It wasn't. I didn't respond. The next day, I walked down to the Sunset Oaks office and signed up for their meal plan. Twice a week, fresh-cooked meals delivered by hand. I didn't need it, but I wanted the simplicity. As I signed the form, the receptionist asked, "Would you like to list any family for emergency contact?" I paused, for the second time, then said, "No, not anymore." She didn't flinch. She nodded and continued typing. That afternoon, I met my neighbor, a man named Gerald. 74, wiry, played blues guitar on his back porch at sunset. "You just move in?" he asked, plucking softly. "Yeah," I said. "Needed quiet." "Well," he said, "you came to the right graveyard." I chuckled. It was the first time I'd laughed in weeks. "You play?" he asked. I shook my head. My wife used to hum along. That's as close as I got. He didn't pry. He just played. A few bars of something sad and sweet. It filled the air like smoke. I sat in the fading light and let the music remind me that silence isn't the absence of love. It's the space where love rests. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a link. From Tyler. "Thought you should see this. https://www.silvergroveretirement.com/gallery. A retirement community. Pictures of fake smiles, shuffleboard courts, morning yoga. And a note. Looks peaceful. You'd love it." No anger. No apology. Just manipulation, sharpened with a polite edge. I blocked his number. I changed my email. And for the first time since Grace passed, I exhaled without pain. The next morning, I placed her ring back into the box and locked it. Mark had sent an updated version of the will. Tyler's name was removed. Everything now funneled to a scholarship fund for music students, in Grace's name. Because love, I wrote in the trust letter, should never be repaid with silence. The locks clicked into place like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence I had waited too long to finish. New deadbolts. New cylinders. New keys. A new mailbox with a key so tight it squeaked when I turned it. Untouched, unshared, clean. The locksmith, a tall man with a quiet mouth, said, "No copies unless you ask for them, sir. You're the only one with these cuts." "Good," I said. He nodded and packed his tools, unaware that every turn of his wrench was a nail sealing the coffin on the life I had just buried. I stood at the threshold of the apartment for a while after he left. Door open, air warm, sunlight stretching across the laminate floor like an invitation. I had a key, and no one else did. It felt almost an asterisk mate. To own something entirely again. That afternoon, I canceled my landline. The number Tyler always used when he wanted to catch me off guard. The one Amber used to call when she wanted to feign closeness by using my wife's name in her syrupy voice. "Grace would have wanted you to help us." That line. That trap. Gone. I changed every pin I had. Banking. Streaming. Utility accounts. I opened a fresh email account. No forwarding. No inbox cluttered with credit card promotions Tyler signed me up for, just in case you ever need points. I needed silence. Not incentives. Then I sat at my desk and wrote one letter. It took me an hour. The words came slow, deliberate, like a final will spoken aloud. When I was done, I folded the paper, slid it into an envelope, and wrote a name in block letters across the front. Tyler. I drove back to the house, no longer mine, but not yet anyone else's, and stepped inside for what I knew would be the last time. It smelled like dust now, like waiting. I left the letter in the hallway, propped against the empty key bowl where Grace used to leave love notes scribbled on grocery lists. I walked the house once more. My shoes echoed on bare floors. The rooms were stripped of memories. No more framed photos. No more threadbare curtains. No more humming from a kitchen radio while Grace made soup on winter nights. This wasn't our home anymore. It was a shell. That's why it had to be them who walked in next, not me. I placed one more thing by the door. The charger. That's what it looked like anyway. It was actually a high-definition, motion-activated camera live-streaming to my phone. It caught everything. The entrance, the hallway, the expressions. I left without turning back. At 6:07 p.m. my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I opened the feed. Tyler's black SUV was in the driveway. Amber climbed out first, wearing leggings and a scowl, her ponytail snapping behind her like a whip. Tyler followed, his duffel bag slung lazily over his shoulder. They looked like they were arriving home from a weekend getaway, not trespassing on the remnants of a life they tried to hollow out. They carried boxes. Amber struggled with one marked bathroom, which made me laugh, as if she was planning where to put her fake marble toothbrush holder. Tyler tried the key. It didn't work. He jiggled it, pushed harder, looked around, confused. Amber tried the garage keypad. It blinked red. Error. She said something I couldn't hear, but I saw her lips form a word that didn't belong in a place built by love. They circled the house like burglars, not even subtle. Tyler muttered, pulled out his phone, probably scrolling through old texts from me, looking for a code. A clue. Then he found the window, the one I had left unlocked on purpose. Amber crawled through like a raccoon. Her box caught the sill and tumbled, spilling towels and something that looked like a curling iron. She muttered another curse, stood up, and opened the door from the inside. Tyler stepped in like he owned it. I watched them pause in the hallway, eyes locking onto the envelope. Amber picked it up. Read it aloud. I saw the moment her knees nearly gave out. Tyler grabbed it from her hands. His face twisted, confusion first, then denial, then something sharp, rage. He threw the envelope across the floor. The letter fluttered, its words now open secrets. I heard what you said about the nursing home. I saw my ring on her hand. The house is sold. The money is safe. Your things are in storage at Mission Depot, Unit 413. I paid the first month. After that, it's yours to handle. This is my final gift to you. Use it wisely. Tyler shouted. Amber sat down. They argued. Her hands flailed. His fingers pointed. He stormed into the living room. The couch was gone. No TV. No familiar smell of old coffee or pine cleaner. Nothing. Amber looked around, panic settling into her posture like a weight she hadn't trained for. She got up, stormed into the kitchen, opened drawers, cabinets, all empty. The house sounded different now, echoes without warmth. I watched him check every room, looking for something, anything he could claim. A jacket, a checkbook, a piece of proof that this still belonged to him. There was none. He found the storage receipt taped to the fridge. He tore it down, crumpled it, shoved it in his pocket. I could see it on his face, the dawning realization. I had closed every door. The camera caught him standing in the hallway, the same hallway where Grace used to kiss him goodnight, where we hung his school photos, where she danced in her socks during thunderstorms. Now he stood there like a stranger, like a man locked out of his own con. Amber came back into view. Her eyes were wet now, not from grief, from exposure. Tyler sat down on the floor. They didn't leave for another 40 minutes, long enough to fully absorb it. I watched them get in the car, neither speaking. They drove off, not with boxes or keys or plans, but with the emptiness I left behind. That night, I didn't sleep, not because I was restless, but because I wasn't. I lay in my bed at Sunset Oaks and watched the wind shift through the tree outside. The moonlight fell in a square on the floor. It looked like a spotlight, but there was no audience now. Just me, free, and silent. 3 days passed. Silence. No texts. No calls. Not even a courtesy email. Tyler had never let more than 72 hours pass without asking for something. Gas money, advice he'd ignore, a cosign. I thought maybe he was biding time, licking his wounds. Maybe Amber was coaching him to play it cool, spin it into some reverse guilt strategy. Your dad's unstable. He needs help. Maybe we should act like we're concerned. But on the fourth day, Friday, the heirs returned. 6:07 p.m. The motion alert pinged. I was sitting on my patio, sipping weak coffee from a chipped mug, the kind that reminded me of diner booths and Grace's crossword puzzles. The phone vibrated against the metal table. One buzz, then another. I opened the camera feed. Black SUV. Same as before. Clean this time. No boxes. No moving day energy. Just calculation. Tyler stepped out first, hair neater, shirt tucked in. This wasn't the wild, panicked son from the last visit. This was a rehearsed version, the kind of man who wears a tie to court because he wants to look sorry before the judge speaks. Amber followed, dressed sharp, pencil skirt, tight blouse, heels that made her walk stiff with purpose. No slouching, no panic. A performance. This was no drop-by. This was a maneuver. They knocked on the door. Once. Twice. Amber tried the knob. Still locked. Tyler peered into the window. Then Amber turned to him, said something short. He nodded. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen. A minute later, my phone lit up. Tyler, let's talk like adults. I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, a follow-up. We're at the Blue Cactus. Please come. It's important. Of course it was the bar. The site of the unmasking. The place where Grace's ring screamed the truth before I ever opened my mouth. Poetic, I suppose, to end where the lie split open. I let them wait. An hour passed. Then I replied, be there in 30. Don't bring her. No reply. But when I arrived, Amber wasn't at the bar. Just Tyler, sitting in a booth toward the back, drink in hand, whiskey, neat. Like mine. Like always. A trick he learned from me, but never earned. I sat across from him. He looked older. Or maybe just more exposed. The kind of aging that comes from being seen clearly for the first time. He slid something across the table. The ring. Grace's ring. No box. No chain. Just bare metal on scratched wood. Here, he said. Take it back. I didn't reach for it. He leaned forward. But you went too far, Dad. The bartender, same one from before, looked up as he said it. He wasn't subtle. A few regulars glanced over. One of them whispered something and snorted. Tyler noticed. His ears flushed red. You embarrassed me, he continued. Made me look like a thief. I picked up the ring. Turned it slowly in my fingers. Read the engraving aloud. G. Heartsuit F. 1993. Until the last dance. Tyler's eyes flicked away. A pause. Then a sip of whiskey. She would have hated this, he said. No, I replied. She would have hated what you've become. He flinched, but recovered. I was trying to make Amber happy. With your mother's wedding ring? She didn't know. She wore it for a week. Slept in it. Showered in it. Called it vintage. Don't pretend this was innocent. He exhaled, slow and theatrical. A therapist's exhale. Practiced. False. Look, I know things got messy. But you're not well, Dad. You're paranoid. You moved out of your own house, changed your accounts, blocked our numbers. That's not normal. I protected myself. From what? From being erased. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Tried again. Amber's pregnant. There it was. The twist. I didn't react. He watched me for a long time. Did you hear me? I heard. We wanted to tell you. We really did. But things got complicated. They always do when you lie. His voice dropped. Softer now. Desperate. We need your help. No, I said. Just until she delivers. No. Just alone. No. He leaned back. The booth creaked. His smile disappeared. Wow, he said. So this is it. This is me choosing peace. He tapped his glass. You know, everyone says the same thing when parents get old. They say, don't forget the people who raised you. I never thought you'd be the one who forgot. I stared at him, and then said the words I'd waited to say for too many years. I didn't forget, Tyler. I remembered everything. Every scraped knee. Every night I stayed up with a fevered child. Every job I took to pay your tuition. Every birthday I planned. Every time your mother cried behind a door after you stormed out. I remembered it all. And it's precisely because I remembered that I walked away. The bar was quiet now. He stood up, drink half full. You'll regret this, he muttered. No, I said. I regretted waiting this long. He turned and left without looking back. I finished his drink. The bartender brought me a fresh one on the house. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Some lessons don't need shouting. The morning after the bar, I woke to a sky the color of steel wool. No sun, just quiet. My coffee brewed slow, sending up steam that smelled like peace. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up bracing for a demand, a text, a guilt-wrapped request. Tyler didn't call. Neither did Amber. The silence wasn't accidental. It was tactical. They were regrouping. But I wasn't hiding. I spent the morning sorting documents. Grace's old file boxes, the ones she labeled in her perfect cursive: insurance, utilities, medical, legal. I used to tease her about her systems. But now, those systems were the armor I wore into the second half of my life. I pulled out the will Mark had updated, reviewed every clause, line by line. There was no room for confusion now. No chance for Tyler to twist my intentions into senility. Everything, aside from a small reserve, would go to the Grace Fletcher Memorial Scholarship Fund for music students from working-class families. The rest was distributed across conservative investments, all held under my name, with withdrawal restrictions and ironclad oversight. Tyler's name? Nowhere. Not unless he completed 3 years of documented therapy and submitted a formal apology, in writing, to the board of the Scholarship Foundation. Even then, only a modest trust would be considered. I placed the papers into a fresh folder, labeled it Legacy, and tucked it into my Sunset Oaks drawer. Then I took Grace's ring from its box. I held it for a long time. The metal was warm from my hand. The engraving still perfect. Until the last dance. I kissed it once. No ritual. No dramatics. Just a man saying thank you to the ghost who had never left his side. Then I locked it in the drawer. That afternoon, I went for a walk around the community garden. Gerald, my blues-playing neighbor, was on his porch again, humming something slow and sad. He raised a hand in greeting. I raised mine back. An older woman, Helen, I think her name was, stopped me near the roses. "You're Roy, right?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. You're the one who sold that beautiful bungalow over on Dawson?" I hesitated. "Yes. My niece lives nearby. Said you left it spotless. Said someone tried to move in after you left?" "Something like that." She nodded, knowingly. "People think they can write your ending for you. But it's your hand holding the pen." I smiled. "That's the idea." She patted my arm and kept walking. That night, I sat on the patio with my coffee and thought about everything I'd given. The years, the dollars, the patience, the blind grace. Grace would have forgiven Tyler. She would have wept quietly and lit a candle for him every Sunday. But she would have stood by me too. She once told me, "There comes a point in every parent's life where love is no longer about giving. It's about stopping." I never understood that. Now I did. At 10:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Voicemail left. I let it sit. At 11:03 p.m., another buzz. A second voicemail. Then a text. "Dad, please. Just listen. I'm trying. I swear I'm trying." No name. No apology. Just enough humanity to stir guilt, but not enough to own any of it. I didn't open the messages. I blocked the number. At midnight, I opened a notebook and wrote a single sentence at the top of a clean page. What would I tell another father in my place? Then I wrote the answer. "Your child is not your debt." I closed the notebook. Slept the best I had in months. The next morning, I walked to the community center and signed up for volunteer tutoring. Basic math and woodworking SK*LLS for local kids. Grace had always said I had the patience of a saint when teaching. I figured it was time I gave that patience to someone who wanted it. A week passed. Then another. No contact. Then, one Sunday morning, I walked to the corner market and saw Amber, without Tyler. She stood at the register, her cart half full of discounted produce and boxed mac and cheese. Her eyes met mine. She froze. I nodded. She didn't nod back. She followed me into the parking lot. "Mr. Fletcher," she said low. "Can we talk?" I didn't stop walking. "I just want to explain." I reached my truck. Opened the door. "Please," she said. "We made mistakes. We were scared. We were stupid." I turned. "I don't need an explanation, Amber. We didn't mean to hurt you. You wore my dead wife's ring. I didn't know. You didn't ask." She swallowed hard. "I'm pregnant," she said again, like it was a spell to make the world bend. "I know," I said. "Congratulations." She stepped closer. "He's trying, Mr. Fletcher. He's going to therapy. He cut back on drinking. That's not my concern anymore." She blinked, as if slapped. "You raised him," she said. "I did. And now I'm done." I got in my truck and drove off. In the mirror, I saw her still standing in the lot. holding a paper bag that looked too heavy for her arms. But I didn't stop. That evening, I donated $50,000 to the scholarship fund and wrote a note for the board. In memory of Grace Fletcher, who believed that music heals, math solves, and kindness teaches. Let this fund serve those who don't just ask, but earn. I sealed it, mailed it, marked the day. I was not alone anymore. Not because Tyler came back, but because I did. It started with a letter. Thick paper, gold-trimmed edges. Mailed to my Sunset Oaks address, the one Tyler wasn't supposed to know. Return address, Wells, Hastings and Finch LLP, a law firm. I opened it in the afternoon, sitting at my kitchen table, half a mug of cold coffee beside me. My fingers hesitated just long enough to tell me I already knew. It wasn't a thank you note. Inside was a summons. Tyler Fletcher versus Roy Fletcher. Filed in Behar County Probate Court. Petition to challenge the terms of an altered will. My name, in bold. The claim, possible cognitive decline. Potential elder coercion. Request for a full medical competency evaluation and temporary financial conservatorship. I sat back in the chair, stared at the wall. They hadn't come for me with a crowbar. They'd come with lawyers. The very last move of the entitled, when manipulation fails, use the courts. When kindness doesn't yield a payday, claim the wallet is malfunctioning. At first, I laughed. Not out loud. The kind of dry, bitter laugh that starts in the ribs but never reaches the throat. Then I picked up my phone. I called Mark. I was expecting something, he said calmly. Not this fast, but expected. He asked me to come in the next morning. I did. We sat in his oak-paneled office while he read the petition, line by line. His brow didn't even furrow. They're claiming mental decline based on behavior changes, he said. You moved homes, cut financial ties, changed accounts, updated legal documents. Classic isolation and confusion pattern. They forgot one thing, I said. What's that? I didn't get confused. I got clear. He nodded and made a few calls. By the following week, I had appointments with 3 separate professionals, a general physician, a geriatric psychiatrist, and a financial advisor. Independent evaluations. Neutral offices. Full assessments. I passed them all. Better than passed. The psychiatrist, Dr. Morales, laughed during our interview. You're one of the sharpest 70-somethings I've seen in years, she said. They're going to regret this. Mark compiled the reports, added affidavits from the community center director, my volunteer supervisor, and 2 residents at Sunset Oaks. Gerald even offered to testify. You taught me how to sharpen a chisel, he said. Crazy men don't teach woodworking. Then, Mark filed our reply. A single line on the cover page. Defense of clarity. I didn't speak to Tyler. Didn't answer Amber's vague follow-ups. She texted once. This has gotten out of hand. We just want a conversation. I blocked the number. Then the date came. Courtroom 2D. 9th floor. Probate division. I wore Grace's favorite tie, the navy blue one with tiny music notes embroidered at the base. She gave it to me for my 60th, said it made me look like someone who knows the answer even if he's quiet about it. I sat at the defendant's table next to Mark. Tyler sat across from me, clean-shaven, somber. His attorney, younger than I expected, wore a tight smile and a louder suit. Amber wasn't in the courtroom. Maybe shame had finally caught up. The judge, a woman in her 50s with silver streaks in her bun and eyes like granite, called the case. The attorney stood. Your Honor, we have significant concern that Mr. Fletcher's recent decisions reflect undue influence and possible diminished capacity. He went on about how Tyler had been cut out of the will abruptly, that financial behavior had shifted erratically, that Mr. Fletcher may be acting under the influence of community peers without appropriate mental safeguards. When it was Mark's turn, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He walked through the timeline. The ring, the stolen key, the hidden move, the sale. He presented statements, bank records, the full psychiatric evaluations. Then he said the one line I'll never forget. Your Honor, this is not the story of an old man in decline. This is the story of a father finally putting down a burden. Mr. Fletcher didn't change because he lost clarity. He changed because he gained it. The judge asked me to stand. She asked if I had anything to say. I did. I looked at my son, not as a boy, not as a betrayer, just a man who had made his choices. I raised my son with open hands. I said, I gave him food, shelter, forgiveness. I gave him his first car, his first semester of college, his start in life. I never asked for repayment. Only respect. I paused. But somewhere along the way, he confused inheritance with entitlement. He thought being my son meant being my shadow, that everything I worked for would one day fall into his lap, like rain. Another pause. And when I told him no, he tried to prove I was crazy. The courtroom was still. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I just told the truth. The judge ruled within the hour. Petition dismissed. All claims of diminished capacity rejected. Will upheld. She looked at Tyler before closing the file. Mr. Fletcher, she said to him, it is not illegal to grow a spine. Your father didn't break the law. He simply stopped bending to your will. The gavel hit. Case closed. Tyler didn't look at me as he left the courtroom. He brushed past. No apology. No fury. Just defeat, muted and bitter. I stepped into the hallway, sunlight spilling through the wide windows, warming the marble floor. Mark stood beside me, briefcase in hand. You've got the cleanest legal record I've seen in years, he said. I nodded. Then I went home. That night, I lit a candle on the patio. I played an old Sinatra record on a borrowed turntable. The song was The Last Dance, Grace's favorite, the one she used to hum while folding laundry, making it something sacred. I danced alone, slowly, barefoot, not in mourning, in victory, because sometimes survival isn't a miracle. It's a choice, and I had finally made mine.